as I lead us. Thank you. I would like to now introduce our board of directors. Tonight we have Cindy Coe, Madeline DeMaitenon, Tasha Woods, Kathy Day, and I'm Mike Rowley. We're also joined by our superintendent, Troy Turno, our assistant superintendent for student learning, Jennifer Kuntz, our executive director of finance and operations, Kim Snyder. We're also joined tonight by Rhonda Schmidt, director of student supports, and two of our principals, Bo Snow at the high school and Michelle Bibich at Morgan Middle School. Thank you. Board, first up is, first action item is the consent agenda. We had an opportunity to review these items individually and seek clarification from district admin prior to our meeting. I would entertain a motion.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Kathy has moved that we accept the consent agenda as presented, and Cindy has seconded. Board, any discussion? I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, consent agenda has been passed. Next up is our special guests and the EHS journalism students. There you go.
Thank you. So good evening. Thank you so much for letting us come in and talk to you for just a moment. My name is Christine Rue, and I'm here as the advisor of both the Allutant, which is the newspaper, and the Klahayim, which is the yearbook. And before I start speaking about a couple of things, just briefly, I would like to introduce to you our third time head editor senior, Ashley Hernandez, who is just going to take you on a little tour of what she's thinking and where she's going and taking her staff.
Hi, I'm Ashley Hernandez. So I've been on the yearbook staff for 4 years since I was obviously a freshman. And now I'm senior and it's my third year as head editor. So I just kind of want to talk about like what we do as in yearbook. I mean, anyone knows what a yearbook is. But currently right now what my staff is working on. So I actually have a pretty big staff this year, which is unlikely, so it's very nice to have a larger staff than usual. But currently we are working on fall sports, which is very exciting. The students love to work on fall sports, getting on the fields, taking pictures, using professional cameras and putting them onto their pages. So they're very colorful pages this year. We'll say that our yearbook will be full of many colors and very exciting and bright. I'm not going to reveal just what it is yet because that removes the excitement, but we are very excited. So I'm thinking about 3 goals this year. So a compliment that we received last year from Mr. Kenyer, which is the athletic director. He said that he really liked how the yearbook was a lot more personal and reached more on the students. So this year as a goal, I set for my students to like get out there, bring people in, talk to them face to face in interviews, because I think we've all been kind of sitting behind our computers and just sending emails. So this year we're bringing students to the classroom, we're going to them and writing down exactly what they're saying like any journalist would. Another goal we have is a competition that Jostens does, or GEA, which is the Journalism Education Association. Yeah, so last year we went to Seattle and we attended this big conference, national conference, and there was many schools there, over 3,000 students went there, 35 states attended and like 2 provinces from the United Kingdom. So it was a very large event that happened here in Seattle. And we got to participate in these competitions where we turn in some of our pages, and that was very interesting to do. So we set a goal last year when we returned to make our spring supplement our competition pages, so they would be a lot more elaborate and exactly what the competition was looking for. So we are going forward to submit those pages, so that's very exciting, and see what the outcome of those will be. And our last goal is to get a more like public eye for the school, be a more of an outreach for the students. So I feel like just being in school, no one really knows the yearbook until it pops out in June that, oh, the yearbooks are here. But we're very active the entire year from the beginning. I mean, I start yearbook the day before school at Club Fair. So, and I'm already thinking even after school what I'm doing. I worked on the spring supplement last year up until August. So, yeah, I was still working on those pages up until August. So it's very active all year round. Every day we attend class. And then on Saturdays, students still go out to go take pictures, or if there's a concert or a sport game, anything like that. So something that we started doing more and participating more in is social media. So, we usually kind of just use social media as a way to promote to buy your yearbook. But at the beginning of school on Senior Sunrise, we actually took pictures of students and we made a video. So I think we have that for you. Oh, it's okay. But we made a video of these students who were wearing these glasses, and it said 2026 seniors. And we posted that on social media, and it blew up. And it was very exciting for the students to see themselves, because usually, I mean, you see yearbook in the hallways, you see them at your games, but you don't see those pictures until, a year later, or what it feels like a year later, and you kind of forgot that that had happened. So we're gonna start like using those pictures more on social media so people can see that like we are using those pictures, and that like, oh, here they are, we do use them and they're for you, and you're the reason why we do yearbook, and it's for all the students. So yeah, I hope you guys are able to see my progress come through, and I'm very excited to end my year like this. Thank you.
So we do have a couple of tips for you. And actually, if you don't mind helping me with that, we're going to give you all one of the supplements. So this is something that we're working on after the book is done. Also, we wanted to just show you this year's book, and it was very successful. So I don't have any of these to give away because we literally don't have any left. But you might want to pass it around if you want to just go through that. Unfortunately, Violet Rivera was not able to be here. She is our new head editor for The Elutant, but she did come out with an awesome issue just recently that I would also like to share. All right. Sure. So this is our October issue. We have currently, if you look on the inside, you can see that we only have a staff of 7, which is working, but it is definitely something that we would like to change as time goes on. But the truth is that students, that the reach of the newspaper is far greater than 7 students. This newspaper goes out every month, and it goes to all the students. And most students do actually, not most students, but at least half the students are reading and engaging with the newspaper. And so I wanted to also share with you some of our limits. Last year was now a survey that shows that students are actually engaged with reading.
newspaper or just parts of it, and they're just like all of us, right? You might just want to look at the sports page, or we might want to look at, you know, ball play or something like that. But the truth is that the class stretches out much more than just 7 students. It really does
actually get to about 500 students. And, you know, we have in the United States a decline in student newspapers. Currently, the statistics are that in 2011, 64% of high schools had student newspapers. Then by 2021, we were down at 45%. Currently, in a rural area, in rural areas like Ellensburg, we're down at 27% of rural areas produce a high school newspaper. Additionally, the truth is that wealthier districts have a much higher support of student newspapers. And really, when I say student newspapers and yearbooks, although yearbooks are a little bit different on the statistics, but they've also seen a decline. The truth is that the support for student voice is higher in wealthier school districts. It is as low as 7% in some of our most impoverished environments. And so, you know, we're fighting a good fight here for student voice. We're getting students up in front of school boards. We are getting students out into the community with their products, which aren't perfect, but they are their voices. And so part of the reason why we like to come here every couple of years or so is to just tell you that we are alive and well, and we are producing, and we need your support. And I know we have it, but sometimes when you look at just the class number, you might say, oh, well, that's not a full class. But when you see the reach of the newspaper or of the yearbook, which sold out this year, it's quite large. And I think that's the important kind of thing to note to end on. Also, last year we did compete, and we did in design for newspapers and news magazines, we did place 9th place in the nation. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's competing. I fully understand that, but the people who are active are, and we are, you know, we're in the game. And that was all I had. Did you have anything else? No. Thank you very much for having us, and we'll let you get to your meeting.
Christine,
Yes.
I had a
Any
couple questions. Yeah. But first of all, for Ashley, where can I find the senior sunrise video? Because I would like to see that, because I have a senior, and congratulations on being a senior this year.
Thank you. So it's on Instagram.
Okay.
So you can search up the handle, which is Clahiam_EHS_yearbook. If you guys want, I can show it real quick. Just come right up to the middle.
We can watch it
It's
later.
just
But...
a compilation of photos, but it's very cutesy. I also have some pictures of seniors that were highlighted in K9 sections. So I would love to show more like seniors, because seniors are so important, and they're like the whole yearbook's just like dedicated to them. So yeah, we really hope to bring more public eye to social media and create a positive outlook for the students. Yeah.
And then another follow-up question is, so there's 7 on the newspaper staff. How many students are working on the
15.
the yearbook? How many in that class?
15.
15?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And then Christine, I have a question for you, if you don't mind. I understand the importance of a newspaper, and I like the idea of holding something, but with the most print going away, have you guys started entertaining the possibility of doing something online or digital that is more readily available to most students?
Well, the newspaper gets printed in Wenatchee, and in order to do that, we produce it, we transform it into or export it into a PDF, and the PDF then gets posted on the website, on Parents Square. Parents Square website gets sent out email. You're talking about a website, right? It's the possibility of a website, and
Similar, yeah.
that's in this day and age, right? That is an additional kind of staff. It's really not the same thing as a printed newspaper. So we right now are not exploring that yet. Don't have a staff member who would like to take that on. I would be willing, although I have done one at Roosevelt High School in Seattle, and I can tell you that it is a little bit more, unwieldy. And students, can post, and it doesn't always filter through the same filters that a printed newspaper would go through.
Thank you.
And that was it. Thank you.
I just have a really quick one. Thank you for coming. Thank you as a senior for showing up, and thank you for your 4 years of building this. Have children at school, so thank you. I see your staff out there working in all the games and events, and sometimes I go, oh, I wish you guys had badges so we would know, hey, that's yearbook staff. And I also want to say a thank you to Bo Snow, because amidst all of the communication, I don't know where it comes from or where it is. Every single month, I do get an email from the principal that says, here is your latest issue. And that is how I've engaged with it. So thank you for that, and thank you for sending that out with your name on it.
That's great. Okay.
I did want to say something too. Just thank you so much to Ashley for all your hard work. And I love that you're going out face to face. Not, there's so many things better dealt with face to face than through email or, other exchanges. And also how important it is to have that forum for student discourse, student voice. So well done. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Christine, Ashley, thank you very much. All right, board, that takes us into administration, and we have first up, school improvement plan, Ellensburg High School and Bo Snow.
Well, while Leslie's getting that pulled up, we get the privilege of being last, which is always great, but having some time under our belt is also fun to see how these things are actually working and taking place. And so it's a cool time to be working with the SIP process, because these are a living thing. And I think that that's probably the coolest part about kind of the transformation we've done in the last couple of years with Troy and Jen's leadership is these aren't just things that are on paper anymore. And so having, 6 weeks of school behind us, some of these things are, I'm looking at it today, preparing, and the one that I sent to Leslie, I would add some things. So I'm going to ad lib some things that you didn't get to see because there are some things that are different. So go ahead, Leslie, we'll get started. So celebrations, we participated with the Wall That Heals, along with Haley's program and Michelle's school as well, which was a huge undertaking, to say the least, to get all of the seniors on buses the third day of school and get them to Rotary. But it was well worth the effort. It was very well received. Our staff loved it. And the feedback from students was kind of like one of those eye-opening type moments to see something of that magnitude, which was really cool to start the year off with. We also had, Ellensburg is a agricultural mecca for students, and the rodeo is a place to show off for us. We had several students participate in the fair, and we have a very cool opportunity. Emily Ryder, who's a EHS grad, is running for national FFA position. And just for the scale, anything when you say national for an organization like that means representing all high schools in the United States. She was a state FFA officer and has now gone on to run for the national position, which means putting college kind of on temporary hold and working at a national office for agricultural education. So it's a pretty cool thing that we got to start the year with, was helping her and watching her do some of her interviews at the high school. It was pretty cool. Over a third of our students were engaged in fall activities or athletics, which for a school our size is pretty awesome to have, over 300 and some students either in fall play or one of our athletic offerings. I will note that we are currently leading the conference in volleyball, leading the conference in cross country, and we won the swim conference already. So we've had a really great fall, just in terms of getting off on the right foot for our activities and athletics. We are running 6 new courses this year at the high school. 3 are college and the high school. And we are running 2 sections of sheltered English classes, which is also new. With new things comes new problems and new things to figure out, but we're working on all 6 of those this fall to be successful. Go ahead, Leslie. So last year we talked about our goal. I made a mistake. I was really honest with the board about that. Picking a gap is really difficult because you pick something that has 2 parts and 2 ends to measure. But our goal was to cut our gap in math from 30% to 27%, and then in English language arts from 48 to 43. Well, the results in the spring went the wrong direction. The gap got bigger, and there are some reasons. The math gap went up to 38%, and the ELA gap went up to 60%. Our SEB goal was to raise the sense of belonging and identity from 68% to 85% as measured by CEE. And our survey results, it went up to 77.4%, reported that they felt like they belonged at EHS. What we're proud of the increased reported sense of belonging. We worked with our Fellows Project, and we worked hard with our Bulldog check-ins weekly to work on figuring out and giving students more voice about how they're feeling and what's going on. So we felt great about that. Our math scores are up to 42%, which is 8% above the state average. Our ELA scores are up to 72%, which is 8% above the state average. We've learned a lot about the process regarding data collection. Like if you pick a gap, it's twice as much work. So the more data you collect, we collected more data. We offered more support to teachers, which was a positive. Like even though like picking a difficult goal was challenging, it allowed us to work with teachers in a different way around data, which was a positive thing. More data meant more discussions about student learning, which is an area that the goal of PLCs is to talk about student learning and to talk about the progress we're making. And you can't do that if you're not looking and talking about data. So that was a good push in the right direction. We completed a lot of work around essential standards, assessment calendars, and proficiency maps. And the way that that's played out this fall is we're doing things we've never done before. We are doing CFAs at a record pace for the high school. We're still behind where we would love to be, but we are doing things that are different. And it has been really fun to lead from a different perspective around student data and working with staff on things that are new. It does create some challenges and some things that we didn't anticipate, but the SIP plan is the new SIP plan this year is going to reflect a lot of the things that are in action. And so when we talk about that in upcoming slides, it will highlight some of the things we've learned from last year and how that's working this year. Go ahead, Leslie. Barriers. Picking the gap was a barrier. Measuring both groups on multiple measures was difficult. We were extremely excited to bring Aubrey on board, yet we haven't had the success we've wanted with Aubrey on all levels yet, but we're getting there. The progress is happening. We're getting things lined up so that we can pull the data quicker, more efficiently, which means we can take action on the data more effectively. We increased our performance and participation on the state testing, which is a good thing. We had more students take the test, which was part of the goal last year. Was we didn't have as many students test that should have. So we worked on our testing format and we worked on making sure we were engaging students for a longer period of time, which means we moved our testing up so that we had more time to chase students that weren't where they were supposed to be when they were supposed to be there. And it worked. We had more kids test, which was a good thing. We had more students that were on IEPs test than ever. I wouldn't say we totally destigmatized the idea of testing, but we definitely had more students test than ever, which we had more students test and pass and more students test that were on IEPs and not pass. So that's our gap was evidence of both of those pieces. We are still working hard at inclusive instruction because we believe firmly that the best way to help students that are on IEPs is to have them exposed to grade level standards in grade level classes. So we have increased our number of co-taught classes. We went up another from 10 to 11. But we're still learning how to maximize that. Not every pairing is perfect. Not every opportunities, work well for every kid. And some classes are better suited for co-teaching than others. And we're learning that process as we're going. As we're growing, though, we have to look also too at resources, like when you're putting 2 teachers in a classroom, 4th period, that means they're not teaching something else 4th period. And so being mindful of that and learning along the way is honestly, it's a challenge, because when you're building the master schedule and you're putting 2 teachers in the same place at the same time, it really limits and channels things that you don't anticipate when you necessarily set it up. So we're working and learning on that as well. Leslie. Back one. Implications for this school year, we're going to continue to disaggregate data for our students on IEPs and our ML students that we know we need to continue to beef up and work on our instruction in those areas. But we set our goals around data points that allow us to see progress and growth in a more linear way that it's a little easier for us to work with. We're working on with Jen and Shannon, who's not here, and Rhonda about how to use Aubrey effectively. We have some dashboards built around our 9th grade success. We're working on our on track to graduate dashboard, and then also figuring out how to build a dashboard where internally we can see our students on IEPs and ML students more effectively. How we're doing that is continuing our POC work and emphasizing working more effectively as teams. And some of this year's SIP plan is specifically targeting some of that. This year's outcome goals, we are still targeting the sense of belonging. We know we have a lot of ground to continue to make up, and we're going to continue to work at that. This year, our goal is to bring that up to 82%. Equity and excellence in learning, and these goals, you guys know, are all connected to the strategic plan. But our ELA goal, or language arts, our goal is to raise our passage rate to 79%, and then in mathematics to raise it to 48% of students that are taking the assessment meeting the standard. Go ahead, Leslie. And we added a goal this year in the future ready graduate category around graduation. And to raise the graduation rate to 92%. Last year, it was around 89.8 or 90%. So the goal is to continue to increase that. How are we going to get there? What are we going to do? The adult work, we're going to continue with our Fellows Project. They came and presented a while back. We have added a liaison to the mix. Kylie Rubel, who's doing an awesome job of engaging students on a regular basis. I said last year that one of the cool parts about the project, but also the scary parts of the project, is it's not supposed to be administrator driven. It's not supposed to be my agenda given to students. It's supposed to be student generated. Well, the hard part about hands off is that it's hands off. And so when the benefit of having a staff liaison is that the students and the staff, in this case, Kylie, are working together to keep the momentum going and keep it going without having me pushing and prodding, which is a challenge, right? It's a balance of how much do you remind and bring together. But they've done a great job this year of sustaining that on their own. Continue to monitor our weekly Bulldog check-ins. We got that up and running again. And just for the board's a reminder, it's for all students in advisory take a check-in, and they have an opportunity to share how they're feeling, if they need assistance, there's multiple categories that basically is a way for students to say, you know what, I'm not doing so great and I need help. And then we have a way to see that on a Google form where it flags to administrators and to counselors to see, and it's color coded. If students are at, a certain point or above, they flag it and we can intervene as quick as we can. Staff training, we're going to continue to work with Paige, who did some training for administrators this summer and then also for staff this fall. We have a plan, I believe, to do that again in this winter, or not again, but further the training. One of the goals that you'll see highlighted in all parts of our SIP plan this year is increase the amount of student discourse. Research is pretty clear. If kids are talking about their learning, they're going to be more confident in what they're learning, but they're also going to learn more. And so we want to maximize that as part of our strategy this year, and then increase the amount of small group instruction. One of the pieces that goes with data is you got to do something with it. And from that is how do you work with students in smaller groups based off of their understanding. And so this is an area that we're working on right now to grow in, because grain size matters. Like if you're looking at, for example, map test scores, that's a whole lot different way to break your classroom up versus, hey, thumbs up, thumbs down on problem number 1 from today's assignment. And so we're really working on differentiating and understanding what that looks like as a staff. So we're going to continue to work on that, and you'll see the SD and SGI as we go. We're monitoring that by doing walkthroughs. I know that we're not the first building to share, but we're doing walkthroughs in a different way this year. And we're monitoring that. And so far, I think we're up to about 65 walkthroughs so far. I know Michelle's going to share a higher number later, but good job, Michelle. But she had a head start on me, but it's really been a fun way for us to see what's going on more. You know, it's one of those things where hindsight's 2020. You think, man, I've been doing this a long time and we hadn't done that before. And so it's a good thing that we were all tasked with, like, try to figure out how to do this, because it has been a really good thing to see what's going on in classrooms from a much different perspective than we had before. So equity and excellence in learning, adult behavior to achieve the goals. We're working hard with our guiding coalition on CFAs, or formative assessments, their learning cycles, and then learning how to really analyze the assessments that you're giving. And that's kind of what we're talking about with small group instruction as one piece, but really knowing what the data is that you're getting from an assessment and then what to do with that data. We have work to do around that, just in terms of everyone's understanding and then how to figure out next steps more efficiently. Student discourse is something we're talking about in PLCs, but also in all of our committee structures. We're measuring that with our walkthroughs, and the way our walkthroughs work are similar to Michelle's. Is we have a monthly rotation. So I have this month 10 teachers that I'm doing walkthroughs in, and then the next month I'll have 10 more. And then all 4 of the administrators at the high school have 10 to 11 teachers each month to go in and we're responsible for doing walkthroughs. So that's kind of how when it says rotation, that's what it looks like. And we just rotate groups throughout the year. Future Ready graduates, we have restarted our 9th grade success team, which Shannon is taking the lead. She's also doing her admin internship this year, and she's also the director for working on Future Ready as on the TNL team. It was a natural fit for her to take the lead on that. We've actually been meeting every week, and we've already seen the number of freshmen that are on the list going down, which is a good thing. And the way the protocol works is you target the students that have 1 non-passing grade, and you intervene with them, you talk to them, you go over resources, strength-based analysis, and then you empower them to make their next step choices. And those meetings are all from staff members. So the committee is made up of staff that work with 9th graders primarily. So they have a lot of these kids in class. And so the way it works is we're sitting around the table, we'll go down the spreadsheet of kids that have 1F, and hey, I met with that kid last week already to talk about this. I'm happy to meet with him again and follow up. Or, hey, my conversation didn't work last week. Would you mind taking a crack at the student to see if there are other things or other layers? And so everybody in the room, and I think we have 8 people on the committee this year, which is our highest number that we've had. But it's working in a different way because we have a little bit different focus on what we're doing with it. And part of the strategic plan and having it be a part of that embedded in there is a good thing. But also when we went through accreditation last year, that was one of the recommendations was to bring it back. And so we've been building it and setting it up since accreditation last spring. And so it's been going really well. Tracking 9th grade on track rates, following the protocol, and then we're also monitoring Zello. Even though we're switching to School Links next year, we're actively monitoring Zello, and it is a part of the career choices class that nearly every freshman is currently enrolled in. Questions for the board?
I have a question just about the walkthroughs, and this is, I mean, this, you happen to be speaking tonight, and it just occurred to me. So there's a form that's filled out from walkthroughs. Is that just emailed or shared with the teacher, or is there a conversation that happens after the walkthrough?
So the way that we're using walkthroughs is that when we built the process, the agreement with teachers was it was non-evaluative. So it was not going to be put into anything as related to their evaluation. The way that we're using the walkthroughs is the teacher gets a copy, I get a copy, and then there's a copy stored in our file for all walkthroughs. The purpose of doing the walkthroughs and the way we're using them at the high school is to look at the system as a whole. So we're looking at it not necessarily as an individual, like walk-in, Rhonda was or was not doing this behavior, because they're pretty short. They're usually between 5 and 7 minutes. And in any class, in any school, at 5 and 7 minutes, you're going to miss some things either before or after that are probably pertinent, relevant to what's going on. So what we're using it for is to gather data over time and look at, based on the criteria that my staff selected, we are looking at the data over time to see, are we seeing these things in 60 walkthroughs? Are we seeing this thing occurring that we're looking for? And one of the things that we're looking for on our walkthroughs is student discourse, small group instruction. And so we went through a process at the high school to have staff input. So those were the 2 that I put on the table that were not negotiable because they were a part of the SIP plan and they were things that I wanted to make sure were embedded in the walkthrough. And then staff selected 2 other categories, and then staff wrote the definitions, went through a process that's why I was behind Michelle. Our process took longer than Michelle's. So, but we really feel good about where it's at. It's just that we're looking at it for a systems-wide perspective rather than going into teacher. But I will say the walkthroughs paired with the district walkthroughs does provide good feedback for staff just on what we're seeing. And then we talk about that in our leadership teams to go, hey, these are the things that we are seeing. These are the things that we want to see more of. And then having a dialogue about how to do that. And so the walkthroughs are kind of like a formative assessment for me, like to see what's working or not working with what we're doing on our teams.
And then I just had one other question. You said that the 9th grade, sorry, I lost the word for it.
Success team.
Success team.
Yep.
Is that for students who just have 1 failing grade? Like what happens with students with more than 1 failing grade?
So the way that the spreadsheet is created is it goes in order. So there's like this last time, I think there were 38 freshmen that had 1 F. And then there were a list of where there's students that have 2 Fs. And so the way that the committee works is we target the 38, and then if there's time available in the meeting, we talk about the next group that have 2. If you're on the list and you have 3 or more, you're getting more intensive conversations. Like our counselors call in anybody that's on our list that has 3 or more to do a check-in that's a little bit longer than the students that have 1. And the conversation format is different. So like when we do the conversation with students that are on the 1, it's to find out their strengths, what they feel they're good at, et cetera. When you're on the list for 3 or more, the conversation is, okay, let's look at root cause, like where we really, is it attendance? Is it lack of understanding? Is it, social, emotional the deeper dive occurs when they get to that place. The goal is to keep the twos from becoming threes and so on, and to move students the other direction, which we're actually seeing happening already, even with just working on it a month, which is good. So the data is going the right way currently. But yeah, the students that have more need are getting more intervention outside of that committee.
Well, I have two questions, but first I got to piggyback on your question about the walkthroughs. Because a lot of districts have done this for a long time. And so SELA has done it for a very long time. And one of the ways that we're layering it, which I think is going to be pretty interesting, we didn't do this the last 3 years that I was there. So this is the first year we've done it. So they go through and they do the walkthroughs. And we're looking at student voice, relationships, clarity of lesson, and 21st century skills. So they're looking for all those 4 things. They compile it just like we are. Then they surveyed the teachers, which we just did that today, on how well we think we are meeting all of those. And then they're going to survey the students and see how the students think, what is your classroom experience like in these 4 areas, and then sort of Venn diagram all those things together. So I'm really looking forward to that, because there's always a disconnect, right? And teachers are like, I am a rock star, right? And the kids are like, what's a 21st century skill, right? And you're like, what? But it'll be really interesting to see where those things cross over. So I'm excited that we're doing this. So, and my 2 questions were for Michelle too, because I think you had some of the same goals that Bo had. Was the first one, did you pick the Smarter Balanced as your measure because you think it's the best way to measure what we want our students to know and be able to do, or did you pick it for efficacy of data? And I don't mean that in a snarky way, just like what were the reasons for picking that?
I chose it because there's just not enough consistent measures available that we have at the secondary level that we can measure those points in time so readily. And then this is what's being published, like whether we like it or not, this is what's out there for the world to measure us by. And so we want to show better progress on that. And the ability to then take the map as a benchmark data to be able to start monitoring, are we projected to be improving, and start intervening on that. So I've struggled the last 2 years in particular, as we've worked on better school improvement plans, to find something that actually is both something that's consistently measured, which thankfully that is something that's positive about the Smarter Balance, and there's benchmarks available. Because last year I tried to do student growth goals, or excuse me, the percentiles, the SGP student growth percentiles. Well, I couldn't progress monitor that in any way. And so then it became its own barrier by choosing something that didn't have that available. So that was my thinking in choosing that.
Yeah, my thinking was very similar, but I mean, at the high school level, we have MAPS testing available. We have the IABs, which are now better than they were previously, and then we have Smarter Balance. Well, the one that has the most data and it's most linked to the standards from my perspective was use the test that's measuring the same standards I'm asking teachers to use in their classes, which should show up on the CFAs, et cetera. But honestly, we're at the beginning stages of tying the CFAs to those pieces correctly. And so without having all of those anchored, like going away from something that I knew is more standardized, that's why I stuck with the Smarter Balance. But we did have the conversation around what is the best way to measure, because measuring growth, for example, for a cohort is much more challenging on Smarter Balance than if you were to take it off of MAP. So we did have conversations in our admin team about like, what are we really shooting for? Are we really wanting to, to strive for growth? But one of our limitations is that we don't map test every student. And so we map test in English 9-10, and then we map test in math, algebra, geometry, and then we map test in science now. But we're starting to expand. Like, we haven't done science for a long time. We're only in year 2 of doing science. There's been a request to look at doing reading all the way through senior so we can see the data longer. Until we have those things, though, the one that's still we can count on reliable data is Smarter Balance.
And then my second one was the PD that we're providing for student discourse, student voice, those things that we might take for granted, but it should probably be explicitly trained.
So the way that, well, when I wrote the SIT plan, I was bugging Jen like, hey, when are the PD days on the calendar? And then mapping out. So our first PD day that we did at the high school was focused on student discourse strategies. So we spent our early release time in the whole staff talking about what does that look like, breaking into smaller groups, talking about their favorite strategies. I provided 5 strategies to the staff to say, hey, here's 5 easily accessible strategies. Please select one to try within the next period of time. And then they all gave me feedback on what they were going to do. And then the expectation is to start seeing it more as we're going in and doing the walkthroughs, and then using the walkthroughs to say, okay, are we seeing an increase in the amount of student discourse in class? I love and I've talked with Colton about the walkthroughs because they're literally a step or so ahead and trying to like pick his brain. And so I love some of those things because I can see them now on the horizon. And so we're starting it. But yeah, the student discourse, and then our next PD day is the 29th. So next Wednesday, we're doing the same format with talking about, like I was mentioning, small group instruction. Like how do we dissect something and go, okay, yeah, from a large scale, but also then in just simply, the quick check-ins, how do we move kids into groups and do some more flexible stuff? So that's kind of the plan.
So a large part of our professional development this last year was focused on incorporating the strategies from the building thinking classrooms work from the math side of things into our math department and building that and seeing that student discourse in action. And so we're continuing some of that work. Jeff LeBrant from ESD 105 is going to come and do some work to help support that work in our staff. And then he has also shared that, he can do some of that same training with non-math teachers. The research was done around math, but the strategies are good strategies. And so that's kind of the paid for PD version. But then also our ML teachers in our district are really well versed in incorporating a variety of strategies to support student discourse and to get them talking about a variety of things. And so I've worked closely with my ML teacher, Hannah Ruppel, who's she did some kind of mini lessons last year during staff meetings. And so we want to continue that, but grow, we need to do I discovered through map data that we need to do some work on not just academic vocabulary. Our kids, there's a gap, it turns out, in kids understanding prefixes, suffixes, and root words. And it's a 3rd grade standard, but our kids consistently are showing up as that's a gap that we're finding. And so when we have our PD, so she'll do some of that in-house led stuff that way. And then of course I'll do some too, but yeah. So kind of a combination of things and trying to really ground that in the research that's out there. So.
Thank you, both of you.
A quick comment. Thinking classroom. I almost asked parents if I could record them at the soccer game. And it was literally at a soccer game, and there were 6. It was a 9th grade high school soccer game, but 6th grade parents were there, and I have 7th grader, and they're like, "Do you know what's happening in the math classroom?" And I'm kind of get nervous as what's going to happen at the soccer game. And they're like, "No, my child comes home and talks about math. What are they doing in 6th grade?" And I'm like, "Oh, tell me more." And it was write down whatever you call the sideline of soccer, that they were all talking about what was happening in 6th grade math. And I almost recorded it because they were so excited and happy about it. And it's not how I thought the conversation was going to go. Yes.
I just had a quick follow-up question about the celebration, the 6 new classes that were implemented. And I'm wondering about the process behind selection and implementation of a new class in the high school.
Is there a specific piece? So the way that it works is, so for example, one of the new college and the high school classes this year is chemistry. So the way it works is we partner or look for a relationship with a university. And the reason we do college and the high school is honestly, Running Start is a competitor for our upperclassmen. And so love it for a lot of reasons, but it's also makes it difficult for a lot of reasons for the high school and for the district. And so when we're looking at new courses, one of the ways we address that is, okay, if we can offer a college credit in the high school classroom where for kids that can stay in the building. So the process starts early. Like right now, we're already talking to teachers about if you want to run a new class or you want to consider a new class, need to have it to me by December because we're trying to move some processes up so we know numbers quicker. So then once we do that, then the teacher reaches out to the University of Washington. And then usually for college and the high school, it's a process to kind of vet out if what we're doing warrants or they will agree to partner with us to put the UW stamp on the coursework. And so they check out the textbooks, they check out the teacher, you have to meet all of their criteria. And then I actually got on a Zoom with UW when we were in this summer, kind of an introductory piece, and they check and they ask me questions about like, what's the support look like? How are we doing X, Y, and Z? So it's a long process to do a college and the high school class. Otherwise, we also have a new class this year, which is philosophy, which we had run in the past. And so new might not be the right word because it's not new to EHS. It's just we haven't run it in 5 or 6 years because the staff member that had been doing philosophy left and went to SELA. And so there was a desire from the English department to bring philosophy back because of some of the things that it offers. And so the teacher proposes a course description, an outline. We match it with course codes with the state. We put it in the registration packet for students. And then students decide whether the class runs or not by they sign up for the class or not. And then in this case, philosophy did fill. And so philosophy made it onto the schedule. And now philosophy is going to be potentially a college and the high school class next year because we're reaching out to Central to partner with them to make it a college and high school class. So the process is pretty simple. The teacher comes up with an idea. We figure out if it's a viable idea. And then if it is a college and high school route, we partner with whatever university will approve the department. Not every department works with Central. Some departments work with Eastern, some departments work with UW. Some departments work with multiple universities.
Yeah. So board, one thing I want to add to this is I was able to actually do the TNL walkthrough yesterday with Jen and Michelle at Morgan, and then Jen and Troy and Rob at Valley View. One of the things that's really cool about it is the initial, you sit down, you talk about what the walkthrough or the things you witnessed last time you did the walkthrough, what on the goals. So and then you go out, you do your walkthrough, and then you come back and you debrief. So if you want to do your walkthroughs, I suggest doing that because it's tied to our strategic plan way more than just going and visiting a school and stuff like that. So that's all I wanted to add. Any other questions for Bo? All right. Thank you very much, Bo. Next up, we have Michelle and Morgan Middle School sit.
All right. So you'll notice the date's a little off. So it was a month ago that we were going to be here. So a couple of things on my celebration there on, can I just go down? Yeah. Thanks. She's got the same thing right here. I can just do this. All right. So we, at the start of the school year, we had 742 students joining us, which is a little bit smaller than we had last year. Our incoming 6th grade class was a little bit smaller than the outgoing 8th grade class. It feels like there's maybe this much more breathing room in the hallways, but it's still a very vibrant place. One of the things I wanted to celebrate early on was that we had really strong start to attendance, which is not in and of itself one of our goals, but it is an indicator of how well we're doing with some of our goals. And so we're really closely monitoring that. I should have gotten updated data for you, but you'll get that throughout the updates throughout the year for sure, because it's an important marker. And it was just really, again, and I think this is probably the second or third year I've said that, it's just really, really great start to the year. It just felt good on all fronts. And here we are 7 weeks in or something, and it still feels that good. And so I'm really grateful for our families, for the partnerships that they're engaging with us. Our staff is just embracing this work we're doing. And the kids are just pretty awesome. The emphasis on being out and doing learning walks and has just revitalized my energy towards what I get to do every day. So that's pretty cool. So last year, a couple of our student outcome goals, one was that our student growth percentiles for ELA would hit the 50 mark for all subgroups. You'll see I boxed in our subgroups for that. We didn't make it across the board. There's some pockets where we identified pretty quickly. Unfortunately, it's our students that are already marginalized based on their traditional success. They have traditionally underperformed, so we haven't quite hit the 50 mark for that. One of our goals was to also get our ML progressing rate up from 25 to 40%, and we did make that one, which was pretty exciting because this is looking at how did those students do individually that year compared to the other chart measures over 3 years. So it's hard to always know if the work you're doing in that year is going to have the same kind of impact that it might so to get that ML data was really exciting because that's the thing that we had picked that was something we could measure right away. And then for math, we had hoped to get to the 50, the goal was to get to the student growth percentile of 55 for all of our subgroups. And you'll see there that we missed the mark in the same categories. Those were the same subgroups that we did not make that progress. And the SEB goals, it kind of ties into this to the same ones from this year. So I'll just talk about that when we get to that one. So what worked well? Having intentional conversations about our students' needs was really important because looking at the CEE data and looking at how our students were performing with intentionality was an important starting point just to get those conversations really launched. Increasing classroom discourse continues to be on our goals for this year. However, we made really great progress last year between the building thinking classrooms work and Hannah's work with our staff. When she gives a training to the staff on, hey, here's some sentence stems that you could include for your classrooms, and then you go into classrooms within the next week and see them taped on the corners of the desks so that they can use those as a resource, really starts to build the momentum and give the kids an opportunity to be using academic language when they're having those conversations. And then really choosing the wrong things to measure helped us understand the right data that might have been more useful. So that was enlightening when you think, because it just seems like, well, we want to look at those growth percentiles because that's their growth, not just achievement. And it just doesn't mesh with anything else that we're collecting. So trying to find better data to look at was good. One of the significant barriers was we didn't have strategized benchmarks. There wasn't points in time where we had a plan that this is the data we're going to collect. And so as a result, we didn't know then it's one of those surprise at the end of the year, let's see if we made it or not. So having those benchmarks set in place is going to help us be able to course correct mid-year should we need to do that. And then I had to just own this piece of it, is that I did not have a good system for monitoring. And with only 180 days, if you get sidetracked at all, you really start to lose any potential for actually making that progress. So I can't lose that precious time. And so trying to develop systems for myself as well was pretty critical. And then how that informed our work this year, we started the year really intentionally around digging into our school improvement plan so that each leadership team and the whole staff had opportunities to process what was on our school improvement plan so that there could be some meaning made from it instead of having it be the elf on the shelf sort of thing. And then we do have some really good monitoring that's going on now, trying to work on make sure that we have some monthly data we're collecting and some 3 times a year spot checking that we're doing to benchmark. And we really just worked at making our school improvement plan something that drilled down to things that we could monitor the things that really matter the most to us. And it doesn't mean that we're not working on 1,000 other things at any given time, but what we're going to monitor and measure are those pieces. And doing that well should lead to next year, those things shouldn't have to show up on our school improvement plan, because we should build some of that muscle memory to be able to move us forward and across the system. So that was just some lessons learned from the year. So then this year, our goals. So the student well-being through agency and connection. Really kept this as the same goals we had last year because we didn't hit the mark. But we know that as just because it's also a part of our strategic plan, but we also know if kids aren't feeling connected, they're not going to continue to grow at the level that we'd like to see them grow. And so there were 9 statements that were identified as on the CEE survey that were related to self-agency for students. And so we picked those to look at, and 3 of those had less than 75% positive responses collectively on those. So that was, the school is doing a good job of preparing me to succeed in life. My teachers tell me the purpose for each lesson or activity, and I enjoy coming to the school. And I've embedded the data on there that you can look at that. And so that shows where we were at last year and where we want to get to that 75% mark. But those 3 in particular had not hit that for both our all students subgroup and for our Hispanic subgroup, because as you saw in the other data, our Hispanic students are underperforming. So we need to understand a little bit more about that. For our equity and excellence in learning, our goal is to get to 55% of our students meeting the state standard for Smarter Balance, and increasing our ML progress rate to 50%, which doing that should also close an achievement gap that exists between our ML students and our all students population. And then for our math, 45% of our students will meet the standard. And that should also, if we're moving our whole, that should increase the student growth percentile for our Hispanic students. I specifically call out ML students and our Hispanic students, partly because we are still a school that's monitored through the state for the OSSI, the Office of some kind of support.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it stands for. What's important is my school improvement plan has to specifically name the groups that are underperforming and how we're going and what we're going to be looking for in those areas. And then for future ready graduates, we are moving to the school links already at Morgan Middle School this year for the high school and beyond plan. And so we're going to ensure that 100% of our 8th grade students are leaving with what they need to have done, ready to go to the high school with their high school and beyond plans launched. So those are our big outcome goals. And then the plan to get there. So in regards to student agency and connection, one of my pretty firm beliefs is that part of their students' connection, especially at the middle level, has a lot to do with the family connection. Because if the families are not feeling connected, then they're not having conversations at home about school, and the kids are less connected. So one step that we will take is our classroom teachers will communicate with families about supporting student learning at least monthly on Parent Square. And we're still, that's a work in progress. So this is the goal. We're not 100% there yet, but we went through and I had a staff member who had done a particularly good job of sending out her updates on Parent Square last year. And so I had her send me several of those. And then we created a template that made it super easy families can get really inundated with the amount of content that they're getting from any place. What they don't need more of is don't forget you have a test tomorrow, or don't forget where to park. What they need more of is this is how you can engage with your child about what they're learning. And so that's the goal of that template, is to help structure that so that they have something that helps build that connection with school. And then communicating our learning targets with connections and relevance to future learning or career opportunities. So it says if the kids are telling us that they don't believe that their teachers are telling them the purpose of a lesson or an activity, we can pretty simply fix that by ensuring that we tell them what that purpose is. And so working on developing those purpose statements, not just, so you can pass the test or so because I said it's important, but actually connecting that. And there's just, with things like School AI, one of my leadership team members then took her learning targets and she created a video that then the staff could use that has prompts on how to help develop the purpose for your learning targets in a middle school friendly language to help them. So trying to increase that. We do our benchmarks for this particular, this wasn't part of the presentation, but now that we're, a third of the way into the school year, no, it's not quite, but it's starting to feel that way some days. We're going to use the benchmarking for this as a student survey that we do through their advisory class. So we incorporated other questions like how do you need help? Would you take help? You're good on several social emotional issues like anxiety, depression, grief, several things that students struggle with day in and day out. Some school related questions. Do you have an adult that you feel connected to at the school? But then we took those 3 statements from the CEE survey and we measured those, and we will measure them fall, winter, and spring because the CEE happens in November, which is hard to know if the work you're doing is making the difference long term. And so we did our first survey in like maybe the 3rd week of school. And it did show, I was able to then show the staff, we are seeing some positive, the kids are responding positively to the work we're doing. And then the other questions led to our counseling team being able to start doing some interventions pretty early on with students who are reporting that they need help in different areas. For our excellence in equity and education, the 2 student smart balance scores, we're going to ensure that the staff is doing a minimum of 1 PDSA plan, do, study, act cycle per unit of instruction. We had done some work as an admin team with Nicole Dimich this summer and from Solution Tree. And one of the things that really stood out was really simplifying that process down to something that's very manageable and ensures that you're having good conversations about the data you're collecting for kids, but also gives you immediate plans for what you're going to do with that data. And so, and we have, I think I mentioned last year, we have on Thursdays and Fridays, our advisory becomes our win time, which is what I need. And teachers have the opportunity to pull students and work with them. And so that PDSA cycle then helps inform the students that they need to work with because it's more about reteaching something that the student's not getting instead of just making up missing assignments. And then also that 100% of the teachers will be integrating classroom discourse strategies to support student learning. And so as we are collecting that data on our learning walks, we're able to see our early emphasis really is on getting those learning targets with the purpose statements as our first big problem of practice we're addressing because that in a lot of ways is low hanging fruit. And so, but yet critical because clearly if the kids aren't feeling that they know why they're doing what they're doing and we're in an era where kids question more. It's no longer just because I said so. And then we'll use school links in our advisory classes to ensure that the students have access and the steps that they need to be able to do this, the high school and beyond plans. So we'll be starting that with 7th and 8th graders November, the 2nd week in November, so that we can incorporate the parent component for conferences because there's there's an access point that the parents need to be able to do too. So I welcome any questions you might have about Morgan Middle School.
This is just a general comment.
Yeah.
For really both of you and also for principals who aren't here, it seems like the SIP plans this year are much more focused on what is the student experience going to be? I mean, certainly what are the adults in the building doing, but how is it going to make a direct impact on the student experience? And so I'm really appreciating that focus.
Yeah, I think that was important to all of us as we shifted to how does this match the strategic plan and Jen's and Rhonda's and Lori, everybody's hard work on creating a template that would work. I think so thank you for seeing that.
Board, any other questions? statements? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
And you guys are free to go if you like, so. Michelle and Bo, thank you for your updates. I think we'd all like to go. No. Okay. We do not, Yutong is not with us tonight, so we don't have a student report. So that takes us to Jen and the teaching and learning update.
And for tonight's TNL update, Rhonda's here to talk about what we're doing with changes to our multilingual learner supports, particularly around sheltered, but some other stuff that we are doing with that. Okay, so I have to apologize in advance. I tried to define all of the acronyms in the presentation. The Multilingual Learner Program is especially odd. You'll see a lot of times, sometimes I'm going to refer to things as ELL when I refer to endorsements because that's still what they're called. And so it's just be aware that there's a lot. So we did some changes to our ML services this year. It's the first time we've done this in several years. And you saw a little bit about the shift. We've introduced sheltered instruction in our secondary classes through English language arts. And I'll talk a little bit about what that is. But the reason that we felt we needed to do this shift was there's some limitations in our standalone period model. So what we were doing before is if a student qualified for ML services, they were being pulled out for a full academic period during their school day. And in middle school and high school, you know, the students are they're only taking 6 classes. And so we basically have eliminated their elective choice and have them take ML services, which, you know, we still have that occurring. We'll talk a little bit about that. Our newcomers and students that are just emerging are now, we've increased their services because they're still taking a standalone class in addition to the sheltered class. But we believed that the standalone period model that was targeted to different levels, but it was still a little bit of a one-size-fits-all approach, needed to be changed and be a little bit more responsive to student needs. And it is a better match to best practices for secondary English language development. It's referenced in the state's guide to transitional bilingual instructional programs for high school as a recommended model if you're not doing something like dual language, which is obviously their preferred model for a school district. So, we feel like this is good alignment to our strategic plan. It was time to look at it from that lens too. I believe it helps with equity and excellence in learning. And so by combining our English language development with our English language arts class, we're providing really more focused instruction on that content area and giving better access to both ELA and I believe to English language development services. And it helps with future ready graduates too, because it does give kids the elective choice back in their day. We were having some students choose to waive services so that they could take the class. This is also, I believe, I talk about this a little bit later. This is also a response to the fact that the bulk of our students in our secondary ML programs are long-term ELs. And so moving to something different than what they've experienced before is also a good and equitable thing to do for students. So like I said, our previous model was ELD period for all. And again, we have a large number, I just already talked about the slide now, large number of long-term English learners, LTELs. The state's moving to experience ELs, so you'll be hearing that more coming up in presentations from OSBI. And again, we have a really big problem with not a really big problem. We had handfuls, around 20 students have opted out of services, but that's still too many students who are opting out of services. So what we're doing now is sheltered instruction in ELA for all of our ML students, plus the targeted English language development period for our newcomers and students who are below a 3.0 on the WIDA access, which is really the emerging students. We have some exceptions to that where if we've identified that a student is still new in country, hasn't been in services for a long time, and they're above a 3, it might still be appropriate for them to also have a standalone class. Other random exceptions that we have are we're required to provide ML services for everyone who qualifies. So if we have students who are participating in our Open Doors program, in our online program, or in like a life skills program, we have to have a plan for them, but they're not necessarily receiving either sheltered or a pull-out period for that. We have these courses. They are not co-taught. It's an ELA teacher. Both of the ELA teachers that we have teaching this, Dolores Gonzalez and Brittany Weiler, are actually endorsed to teach ML classes. But they're partnering with the ML teacher, especially during this transition year, to make sure that we're properly combining the ELA class with specific focus on the English language development. So they mesh nicely, but it's not a perfect match there. So it's really about that integrated content and language instruction. Like I said, there are some students that are in an additional English language development period because it is really appropriate for those kids who need it the most to get extra help. Benefits of this model are obviously that it increases the supports for our newcomers and beginners, allows more access to electives, and it also starts to place more of the responsibility for English language development with our general education system. And so, you know, I didn't put it in, I don't believe I put it in this. No, I didn't in this presentation. But, you know, one of the things Michelle was talking about was how her ML teacher is really starting to develop into a coaching role. And so it actually frees the staff member up potentially to work as a coach, to go into content-based classes, to assist on things like sentence frames or strategies, to develop English language skills within the content areas. And those are strategies that really translate to every student. I mean, you know, I taught biology and I felt like half of the time it was a foreign language course. And so, you know, really, I could have used sentence frames for native English speakers. So I think this will be a really good thing for our system overall. And so it's an improvement in quality of our system without an additional cost to the system. So our next slide. Thank you, Leslie. You did a really good job of just following along. So at our secondary level of the my numbers might be a little off. I pulled these several weeks ago, and we've been just kind of cleaning up our data. But we had 90 long-term ELs out of 112 ML students at the secondary level. So that means that they've been in program. I think the definition is at least 5 years. It depends what statistic you're using. I believe that's the one I was getting off of Elevation, but it really depends on where they entered. It's dependent if a student enters and their English language is at, you know, they're already at a 3.0, we would expect them to exit within maybe 2 or 3 years. If someone's starting at a just emerging level, then they might have 5 years to progress out of EL services before they are kind of behind or not showing adequate growth. And then we have 35 students who are exited and monitored in the program. So they've, in the last year or two, have passed the WIDA or done a combination of getting a high enough score and passing the Smarter Balanced to exit from ML services. And so we monitor their progress and offer additional support. And that also frees up our ML teachers to do more targeted help for students who are exited, since they're not teaching 5 classes a day. So we also are doing a couple of other things. We have started through a grant from OSPI, a new initiative. We have an elementary heritage language program for Spanish that we've started. We started 3 weeks ago. It's focused on culture and literacy, specifically reading and writing. And so I don't know, we have the students that were recruited are students who reported their home language, families who reported their home language is Spanish, and the students can understand Spanish and speak Spanish to some degree. And there's some degree of shyness, some degree of fluency there. We've done some, little fun assessments. We're not giving them quizzes after school, but, just ask like, hey, what's your favorite color? Tell me about yourself. And like, oh, okay. 16 out of the 17 students can say Azul for blue, but they don't know how to write it. And so, and that's why focusing on Spanish literacy is important. It was something that we knew was going to be the case, but it's a little sad seeing it in person. And but it's been really, really fun. I don't want to be a bummer. So I've been helping with it for the past. I'm committed to doing this first 6-week session, and so I'm there. I'm mostly escorting students to the bathroom because I'm not fluent in Spanish, right? So I'm helping out, opening doors, things like that. But it's been really fun, and so we're doing it through the Tuesday before Veterans Day. We'll do additional sessions in winter and spring. And on the 10th, we're also having a family event and to get feedback from the families and just to see how it's going. And it's a good way also for us to check in with the community, because instead of inviting like, hey, come talk to us about stuff, it's like, hey, come see what your kids are doing. And then we'll use this as a venue to talk about how your school experience is going in general. It's been organized by our Spanish family liaison, Cindy Melchor, who's done a really spectacular job at organizing this, communicating with families. She's really amazing to work with. And Dolores Gonzalez from the middle school has been planning the lessons for us. And so we do a K2 session where we have 6 kids, and then we have a 3-5 section where we have 11 very energetic kids that I help with. And now I remember why I teach high school. And it's facilitated by district interpreters. So there are sub interpreters, and they're amazing. 2 of them are completing their education programs at Central right now, and they're really doing it's an amazing job. It's been a really positive experience. We've had basically perfect attendance at all of the events. We're busing kids from all of the schools to Mount Stewart. Mount Stewart has I believe our highest population of ML students, and they dismiss the latest. And so it's easy for us to just have a transfer bus take kids from Lincoln and Valley View, and we walk the IDA student. We only have one for some reason. And the next slide is a cute picture that Leslie took. I invited her the first session. Oh, it's not there. Dang it, it's on mine. If you could only see. Oh, look at happy smiling kids. Sorry, I thought it was a live one. I apologize. And then there a slide that won't be on here then, because I thought I was updating the live one, was the other thing that we did that I forgot to put in the update was we were awarded a grant through Title II, which is normally was for professional development, but there was one specifically for increasing dual language and ELL endorsed teachers in districts. And so we got the grant, and 3 teachers actually participated in PLU's online ELL endorsement program over the summer, including Brittany Weiler, who got endorsed, which is really great. And she had really great feedback about the program. So it covered the tuition, which was not cheap, and books. And so the other 2 staff members completed the course. I'm not sure if they've taken the certification test yet, but that was a kind of a nice thing that we did to increase some of the capacity. So even if they're not directly teaching ML courses, those like the 2 other teachers aren't, it still increases staff capacity overall. So that's where we're at. And we'll be, I believe, next board meeting on the our TBIP grant kind of plan will be on the consent agenda, but we wanted to present this to you because we actually did change something. So you might be interested to know that before you see it on the consent agenda. And that is almost it. So next steps, obviously we're going to continue to monitor the effectiveness. We have high hopes for it. We've gotten really good initial anecdotal data that the kids are enjoying the class. The teachers are enjoying teaching the class. So we're hopeful that this is going to be really effective, and we're going to measure effect. We want kids to enjoy the class, but we also want students to be making progress on the WIDA and eventually testing out. We'll evaluate our heritage language pilot to see what we'd like to do with that. I mean, we're not going to be able to tackle Spanish literacy 1 hour a week, but it's a start. And, I think we're just continuing to look at what we want to do, for dual language. That's still just kind of in a waiting area, and that's going to be a challenge based on, are we anticipating any kind of staff turnover that would allow us to hire bilingual staff? And then, and there's always a possibility, like, what would heritage language look like? Could we reintroduce that at middle and high school as a course offering for Spanish. So, and then, yeah, like I said, there's always those staffing considerations are what kind of comes into play for making more robust plans around these areas. I think that is it. Okay, thank you. Questions?
This is awesome work. So thank you for all of that. Is it just Spanish that we have represented at secondary right now? Because we have a lot more languages represented other than Spanish at elementary, right?
Yeah, it's we do have gosh, I don't know off the top of my head how many languages we have. I'm thinking it has to be over 20 in the district. And those are represented by like 6 kids or 2 kids, right? And so it's hard. So baby steps on, doing like our most dominant language. Spanish is by far our most dominant language. And that's always a problem. Like if we're offering a heritage language program or a dual language program, it's dual language for one target language. It's not for all of the target.
But the sheltered would be for any language.
Any language.
That's
yeah.
what I thought. Yeah.
I thought you were
No, I was asking specifically how many were represented, but I also was figuring it was for all of them, just because I know Brittany speaks Spanish and Dolores speaks Spanish, and
Yes,
just wondering
it is for all of them.
Yeah.
It's not a dual language type of a class. It's just
or bilingual. It's for
no,
great.
it's for any. Sorry, yes.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask if there's any other questions. So
Could you educate me just a little bit more, Rhonda, on the relationship between multi-language learners exiting? Is that the language that's used, exiting and then being monitored? So I'm just wondering about the relationship between getting students to be fluent in English and the heritage language process. Like, how do those two things interact?
Right. So it's kind of 2 questions. So like the heritage language piece, I'll tackle first. So I think the easiest way to explain it, and sorry if I'm not answering the question that you're asking, so stop me if I is that, like things like reading and writing are like skills in themselves that are almost language independent. And so if I'm taking advantage of someone's first language and developing literacy skills in writing and reading, it's going to transfer to the next language, English. And so building that literacy, and that's why dual language programs are effective, is that you're building a first language really well, and then that translates to second language. And that's also why you see a lag sometimes in ELA scores in dual language programs. So like with the heritage language, it's partially about that. It's partially about building that literacy. And then potentially, our program is not robust enough to really truly build that literacy. But part of it is that. But then there's also the other pieces of heritage language, which would be like that sociocultural competency piece too, and establishing that belonging and feeling like I'm a valued part of the school. My identity is seen and understood. So it fits in 2 different ways. What we're really not doing right now is like the third pillar of dual language would be like academic excellence, and that's we're doing more of an enrichment program. So we're not really targeting that. For the exited monitored, and so I don't, so they've passed the WIDA, but we do know that students, once they pass the WIDA, the academic language still gets more complicated as we go up during grade levels. And just because you've exited at one grade level, like especially at 5th grade, if I've exited at 5th grade, the academic language really ramps up in middle school. And so you might still have trouble accessing because you're not getting the academic language quite as quickly as native speakers are, for just a lot of different reasons. And so that's the reason behind monitoring, is that it's known that there's going to be some backsliding, and that we might need to do some purposeful like tutoring or things to keep the kids on that trajectory.
any other questions? All right. Thank you very much, Rhonda. All right. Next up, superintendent update, and Troy.
Okay, so tonight the update is pretty much just going to be focused on levy planning and the timeline and some of those. So as we get ready you'll know what we're working on before we meet next time to kind of make final decisions and get the thing rolling. So we're continuing to work on our EPO levy authority sheet. Sounds draconian, and it probably is, but it's actually not that big of a deal. But OSPI, a while back, they made some changes in the laws where OSPI has to look at and approve levies, basically the outline of them prior to going out there. So we're continuing to work on that. And what it really is, that is process is to help us define and understand, where we want to go with it financially, how much we want to collect. And so really the issue is right now is really looking at what's the future growth of assessed value. And so we're getting lots of opinions on that. I'll continue talking about that. But the 10-year average for Ellensburg is just under 9%. That's slowing down, obviously. But in the last 10 years, that average is that of growth. The 5-year average is 4.3. So Kim has reached out to the county and asked, okay, so what are you projecting? And so the county's projecting 2.4 next year, and that slowed down a little bit in assessed value. So we worked then with our financial advisor, which is Mark from ESD 112, who helped us with the bonding stuff. Our bond underwriter, which is D.A. Davidson, Corey Pleger, he weighs in on these types of things. And then the county's assessor's office to get everybody's best assumption, because that's what we're doing. We're making an assumption on assessed values and then identifying a rate that we need to collect the amount that we decide that we're going to have. And if we're off a lot, and no one hits it like perfect, right? Because you don't know that. But if we're off by multiple percentage points, it can be impactful on the total amount that we can collect over time. So we have a lot of help with that, I guess, is the best way to put it. But that's what Kim is having to put into the levy authority worksheet, and that's what we're continuing to work with. Another thing we will want to consider, we've been operating, I think, the last 2 times on a 4-year levy. We can have a discussion about whether we want to go 1, 2, 3, or 4 years. We probably want to stay away from 2 years, in that we have a capital technology levy that will be renewed in 2 years. We will also, in the course of after this hopefully passes, this upcoming levy, we will really need to turn our attention to that levy and our capital facility needs, particularly around Valley View and a few other things, HVAC, obviously, at the high school and at Valley View. So we will have some other considerations, but that's something for you to think. We're operating off of, we think probably 4 years is the way to go, but we have not decided that, so we can have that discussion and finalize that in November. We will need to, as I said, obtain OSPI approval for our levy expenditure plan prior to submitting the resolution to the county. So the resolution to the county needs to go to them by December 12th. So we will have to have our levy authors, our planning expenditure plan into OSPI before that. It's not a super complicated thing. They're not asking for lots of details. It's just sort of broken down, but it takes about a week or so for them. And probably, since a lot of people are running in February and meeting a December 12th deadline, they'll be expecting quite a few. So that's kind of where we're working towards. Okay, next one, please. So the next step, what we'll really be doing over the next few weeks, and then finalizing and working on at our study session, is really that development of the resolution. And so we work with another group. We work with an attorney, Lee Marquisio, from Foster Garvey. Foster Garvey is our attorneys that work with our bonding. So we had a little bit of as we were refunding the bond, they do the technical stuff for us. So that's yet another set of attorneys that we have and get to pay. So anyway, we'll be working with him to kind of lay the groundwork and so they'll have everything ready. Then we'll plug in, once we make those decisions, we'll plug in the details of the amounts, the estimated rate. Remember, the rate is always estimated because it does fluctuate based upon how the assessed value works out, because we are collecting a set amount of money each year. And so they'll work on that with us, work on the language, do all of the legal stuff. So we have Lee to work with on that. And so we'll work with him prior to the meeting and have everything ready to go. I will be double checking with him on the timeline because it is a little bit interesting. Our November meeting schedule is a little different in that our business meeting is the week after the study session. So we'll need to make sure that he's all aware of that, ready to go. So what we'll need for the resolution that Foster Garvey will create is we need the date that you will consider the adoption of the final resolution and indicate in it, for some reason, it has to indicate in it that it was occurred at a regular meeting or a special meeting or something. So it'll be our regular business meeting. So we'll be working with him on that. We'll obviously need to give him a resolution number because it'll be in there. And then our years of collection, 1, 2, 3, or 4. So that has to go in there. The amount to be collected per year. And so that's what we're working on right now, that total amount. What does our assessed value say? What is our, what is that going to generate? We're trying to predict over that 1, 2, 3, or 4 year cycle, what that looks like each year. So that's why we're having to spend some time getting a lot of people to weigh in on the future growth of our assessed value. And then you have the estimated dollar rate per $1,000 that would be required to produce the levy amounts each year. And so that's what a lot of people, when they see the levy, they got to vote, they look at that estimated rate. But the reality is that it does go up and down a little bit depending on assessed value. And then in the resolution, confirmation of OSPI's timing to approve the levy expenditure plan. So we have all of those things that go in there. That's why they don't leave it up to us to write it. So we have lawyers. And then the other thing that they will be helping us with is we will have to have the resolution filed by December 12th, but we also then have to have the for and against committee that we talked about last time, the for and against committee appointment form by December 12th. So we don't have to have the people identified by December 12th, but we have to have gone through the process of advertising it, talking about what meeting. And so I'll make sure I get more kind of information about that. But those are the big steps that we're going to be doing. So some of those things that we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks are really requiring third parties outside of us, a lot of back and forth and making those decisions so we can bring to you the data and look at it, talk about it, and boom, we're sort of ready to go. So last one. So this one is just, Lee sent this out and just to make sure, there's a lot of RCWs as we move from planning what it is then to, all right, how do we get it passed? These are the reminders that we are not able to promote it as vote yes for it in our official capacity while we're on official time. So we have to make sure that we're very careful with election campaign restrictions. RCW 4217A 555 lays it out pretty well. It'll be changing January 1st for the numbering for some reason, but it really, talks about how we are not allowed to, promote that, which we all know, but that's important for us to make sure that we understand the law and what it's about. And then the second bullet there are some exemptions. To that. So you can adopt a resolution in support of or in opposition to a ballot proposition, just if we were taking a position as a board, there are some political things that we could do. It's pretty rare for school boards to do that, particularly in towns our size, but at times in larger systems, boards will take a position on a ballot measure that might be, so for example, Spokane School District is running co-levies with the city of Spokane. So they've intertwined them. So there's a school district levy and then there's a parks levy, and they are basically working together. In fact, it won't work very well if one passes and the other doesn't, because they are partnering on facilities and things like that. So the board can take a position to support the parks levy. So that's just kind of what that stuff says. And, there's a whack around exemptions of what's normal and regular conduct. And so that's where that comes in, where we can educate on the levy. We can put out information about the levy. We can talk about things that are supported by the levy, but we have to stay away from urging people to vote yes. We can remind them to vote. But so we'll have to be, you know, make sure we get some information around that. It's becoming, we all got a bit of a, I think it was at our WASA meeting in last week, we got a bit of a lecture on making sure we comply with everything, and that they're continuing to, the PDC is continuing to tighten up, and school levies just happen, and bonds just happen to be probably the most consistently voted on local taxes across the state. So schools and school districts are getting, you know, hand slapped a lot of times. So we just want to make sure that we're in compliance, and we're making sure that we are working through that. But that's kind of the next step. It's going to ramp up here over the next week or two as we prep, and then it's going to go really fast once we start, you know, getting that data. Our financial advisors from ESD 112 recommends consistently that you go with the overall average. But that's making us a little nervous when we see what the county's predicting, and we can look around us and see what's going on in the economy. Although I don't know, houses in my development keep going for sale, and they eventually sell, and then there's more that pop up. So that's kind of strange. In Soap Lake, my mom's house, my sister and I have been trying to sell it, and we haven't heard anything since July, and we've, you know, dropped the price quite a bit. It's on a golf course. So, you know, it's not working there, but, so, you know, we're in a little bit different. So we're talking about being conservative. We'll continue to get, feedback from everybody that helps us out, because that's their job, is to do the math and to do it and to give us some advice. So, we'll work on that. We also, you know, you take into consideration what's, you know, what also is being added in your community. It's not just about homes. And so, you know, we know there are a few businesses being developed, and, you know, for example, the giant warehouse isn't going to necessarily change things, but it's certainly going to change a lot how that particular large parcel of land is taxed. So that's what we're going to be working on. So I just wanted to kind of go through that timeline with you, let you know what we're working on, and just sort of what questions that you might have as we kind of get into that more, making a few decisions or providing some options for you know, for us to make decisions.
I have two questions. One is, I was talking to Dan Schisler, who used to serve on the school board, who had no memory of having to make up these for and against committees. And so
that's relatively new.
Okay.
Relatively new.
I've never heard of that.
No, I don't know how new it is, but it's within the last 6-7 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Dan was scared. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That was just.
Well, and it used to be, it didn't actually, and it's altered already from what it originally was. I mean, originally was you just had to go out and ask, you know, offer that. Now it's like you have a responsibility to fight against. So it's morphed a couple times, but it's a relatively new gift to us.
Gift. So then just to clarify, on that first paragraph on compliance with campaign restrictions, if we as private individuals, even though we happen to be school board members, promote, and we can tell people to vote, but can we also as private individuals not using?
Yeah, as long as you're not using anything officially associated with the school board. So you can't use your, you know, school email account or that kind of things. But yes, we can advocate independently for that. But that's usually what people are watching for. So like we can't print a vote yes thing off of our printers at any school or the district office or whatever. So yeah, but yes, individually we can. We just have to make sure that we are acknowledging that if we're talking about voting yes, we are doing it as private citizens on private time.
Any other questions on the levy at this point? All right. Thank you, Troy.
Yep.
I'm on the wrong thing. Okay, so that takes us into the business part of our meeting board. First up is the enrollment report.
Yeah, so hopefully you've all had a chance to look at it. We are in good shape. with our projected enrollment being, 3,111 FTE, and we came in October at 3,166, or about 50 over, which is nice. That in our September didn't have TK in it in the actual enrollment because we hadn't started TK at that point. It's about 40 kids. And so then we also picked up a few across the board. So that's a nice, healthy place for us to start in October. We know that generally speaking throughout the year, we lose a few of those, but that should keep us right in coming in very strong on our projection, which is good for us. That's the worst thing for us when we budget is all of a sudden we get low on projections, but we're going to be, we looks like we're going to be in pretty good shape. Our running start numbers are trending to be very consistent now. So I think that we have enough of a long-term trend to know that this is what we will plan for each year when it comes to scheduling and staffing at the high school or whatever. Now, it'll ebb and flow a little bit over time. One of the things that is growing a little bit are open doors programs, and we do get to count students for FTE in open doors. It's different. Remember, that's a dropout recovery program, re-engagement program. So it's students that have essentially dropped out. We are re-engaging them in a different way. Back in their education. So that's those numbers being a little bit more than they were last year at this time are also helping us out a little bit, but that's also a fluctuating number as those students come in and out of the program. It's almost regular how much they go in and out of the program. So as Kathy can talk about at length. So any questions on enrollment?
Was the projected enrollment, is that essentially what we budgeted for, right?
Yes. So Kim goes through the statistics, figures out a projected enrollment, and that's what we build our finances around.
Any other questions for Troy on the enrollment report? It's okay. Bless you. All right. That takes us to the financial update and Kim.
So tonight I'm going to be going over September 2025. It's our first month for the year. We're on track for the first month. You will notice a few discrepancies between Kittitas County Treasurer and the district. The general fund is off by 22,000 and the ASB fund is off by about 1,600 due some warrants. This is due to some warrants being redeemed in 2 different months. They were redeemed in July, August, and then August, September. So at the county side, so the outstanding report and the redeemed was not correct. But they're working on it and it is getting better. So we're working close with them still to get that going, but it is much better than we saw in August. So yes. General fund, for the month of September, the district spent, I'm skipping there. The general fund revenue comes in at 6.64% and expenditures come in at 9.1. The fund balance is sitting at 8.4 million or 13%. For the month of September, the district spent a total of 5.9 million, which was made up of 67% on salaries and benefits, 14% on supplies, and some of the bigger expenditures we had was 148,000 to Imagine Learning for the district online school, 49,000 to Curriculum LLC, 45,000 to Aubrey for annual subscription, 248,000 to Ednetics, and 38,000 to Lexia Learning System to support our teachers in the classroom. We had 19% on professional services, and the major expense for September was the district's $972,000 payment to School Insurance Association for our district liability insurance. And last year it was approximately $861,000. So that's how much it's gone up again. Capital project funds revenue come in at 13%, and there was no September expenditures for the capital project fund. The debt service fund revenue came in at 1.5%, and there were no expenditures in September. ASB fund revenue came in at 13.29%, and expenditures came in at 3.87%. Some of the expenditures for September for the ASB fund is $12,000 for BSN Sports for uniforms, and $8,000 to Shirtworks for the first day T-shirts at the high school. And then the private purpose fund, the fund balance is sitting at about $35,000, and there were no new expenditures in September. And the Transportation Vehicle Fund, the revenue for this fund came in at 0.38%, which is just interest, and no expenditures for September. So that is all I have for September. And I'm still closing out the financial statements for 24-25. So still working on this.
Thank you for the update, Kim. Board, any questions?
I'd just like to add that it's, you know, Kim's had to work really hard, Patrick, our entire fiscal team with the issues at the county of changing over the systems. And the county has been responsive. It's been challenging, but ESD 105s have to get involved and lots of things. So as the issue was, as Kim's closing out the year, we didn't have any of the data. You know, they didn't have, and there's still some discrepancies out there that we are sure we have the correct amount, and they still owe us some money, and they'll get it to us. But it's been a real challenge to, you know, get this year rolling, and it's always a challenge to do year end. But it's been particularly difficult with their system, and I think we've learned. And they are learning the holes that they have. We have learned that we will make sure that we focus even harder than in the past on reconciliation to make sure that when we're there, it's become sort of evident. And unfortunately for them, and they're working really hard, but they have to manage the fire systems in the city. You know, they have a lot of different systems. But so, you know, we understand the schools. And so Kim and her team are developing some new things for us each month to make sure that as they continue to refine and get their reports back to being as useful as the old ones were, that we are making sure that we're double checking and triple checking the work, I guess, so to speak. Like, you know, the old math teachers double check your work. So we've learned a lot about that process. And so even though it's been really challenging for them, and we do appreciate the willingness for the treasurer's office to answer questions and to work through or whatever, but it's also helped us understand, you know, some things that we're going to want to do and keep in place to make sure that things are correct each month.
Great. Thank you for the clarification, Troy.
One of the things I have to add to that is that one of the things that happens is because they're our bank, we don't have a bank statement that we get. It's their bank, you know, but we go through the county treasurer. So when they say they redeem these checks, we have to assume that these checks have cleared. You know, and so then when I started really reconciling through it, I had to really like, here's our checks. What do we do? You know, what's on the outstanding list? What's on this list? And so that's when I started seeing more discrepancies on those. Like I said, they're cleaning them up. They're getting better. But we do have to take, when they say these are what are cleared, we have to take that. That's what those are cleared. But we can reconcile like, oh, that was on last month's. Why is that on this month again? Usually doesn't happen, but because they went to a new system, it happened.
Thank you guys very much. Next item under business is Resolution 121025, the levy certification.
This is our annual certification for our levies. This is a resolution so that we can collect our levy taxes in calendar year 2026. You have to do that every year and send it to our assessor's office to make sure. If you don't do that and get that certified, then you can't collect. So we make sure we do this every year.
And board, this is an action item.
I move that we approve the levy resolution.
I'll second.
Kathy has moved that we accept the levy resolution, and Cindy has seconded. Board, any discussion? I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Levy resolution has been passed. Next up is unclaimed property resolution.
This is a resolution that we also do every year so that we can do our unclaimed property, which is checks that have not cleared, that people have not cashed. We do a big process of sending out letters and contacting the people to see if they would like to cash their checks or get a new one if they don't have them anymore. And so these are the ones that we either didn't get any responses or, that we will be sending to the state. So we just have to do a resolution to get board approval to be able to do that.
I will move to approve the unclaimed property resolution 2025.
And I'll second.
Cindy has moved that we approve the unclaimed property resolution, and Kathy has seconded. Board, any discussion? Call a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, unclaimed property resolution has been passed. All right, board, that takes us into the policy portion of our meeting, and there are 6. So the first one up is first reading, policy 1630, superintendent evaluation.
Yeah, so WASDA dumped a bunch on us this month. So I did a little more digging though, because after Mike and Kathy and I met for the agenda planning, I had just sort of been working through this, and I did a little more digging. And so obviously we have all of these are first reading except for 3210, which is second to vote. So this is just discussion and anything you'd like me to look at. But they are batching 1630 with 1005, 1210, 1820, 1821, and 5000. They consider all of those policies. Some of them are critical, like this one. Others are important. Some are even discretionary. But they are batching these and considering them to be the policies that implement the updated WASDA board standards. So they're all 6 of those are related to them. Now, I think we put 1210 in consent because it was a very little change. We already had that policy. The policies that were in consent were all things that we already have and just minor tweaks. So anyway, so if there's any questions about this, it really just is updating and expanding the evaluation process with me. It's not super specific, but it's just updating to those WASA standards, and we'll lead down the road. What they would like is everybody to use the new WASA thing that they're coming up, and I'm sure our WASDA that we will learn about here in a couple of weeks in November. We're perfectly fine to do how we've been doing things because these areas are covered in the things that we talk about and use at WASA, but we'll continue to work through that. So any questions for me on this one as a first reading?
Right. Does not look like there's any questions on that one. We'll move on to the next one. First reading policy 3425, accommodating students with adrenal insufficiency.
Yeah, so it's a brand new policy. And it's critical. And so it's one that we need to implement. There's a new RCW that was passed to add on and specifically deal with adrenal insufficiencies in students. It's not like they've been ignored, right? But it's just adding that requirement that they go into the health plans. And then it also, and I forget which one now, it's 30 something, 3412 maybe, a medication at school. So it fits into that. And so it's really just codifying that we have to work with students with adrenal insufficiencies in health plans and through a process that's now encoded in law. Doesn't make a ton of changes for us, but it's a brand new policy.
Board, any questions at this time on that? Okay. All right, we'll move on to the next policy. First reading policy 1821, standards for individual school directors.
Yeah, so this was the one we were talking about. Like, okay, what's the origin of this one? So it's once again with those policies that I listed off at the beginning. It's their desire to how to implement through policy their reformed or refined board standards. It is important. It's not one that we have to pass. Remember, the important category is ones that are intended to carry out law and or standards and practices, but are not specifically required by law. I think there's been I was wondering if this was tied to the new oath of office requirements, but it's not really. It's more part of the WASDA board standards. So at our December meeting, when we have 2 board members that have to take the oath, it will be different. And each time you get reelected now, then you're on a cycle with a new oath of office requirement. So I was a little kind of like, are they? Just a little I was a little wondering if they were cajoling us into things, but it really is based upon the WASDA updated standards that they have for board practice. So I can't speak to every section in it, the rationale behind it, but it's what it's supposed to, each one of the numbered areas are what they're focusing on with school boards. So
at the very first, the last line of the first paragraph is collectively the board will assess its performance in terms of these 6 major functions. I don't recall our ever doing a self-assessment. Is that required?
Yeah, that's in that, I think it's 1005 or 1210. And so it's always
I thought I remember reading it somewhere.
Yeah, it's always been there, but it was not very well defined, and it was not. So they've really outlined all these things. It made a lot more sense to me once I saw what they were doing in terms of packaging